Hello, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast, where we help you improve your English for real life situations. I'm Emily, and as always, I'm here with John. Hi, John.
Hey, Emily. Hey, everyone. Today's topic is incredibly important. We're talking about emergency situations, what English phrases and vocabulary you need to know to deal with emergencies, contact local authorities, and ask for help.
Exactly. If you're an English learner, handling emergencies can feel even more stressful. Today, we'll go over key vocabulary, phrases, and processes that will help you respond to emergencies with confidence. This episode is all about being prepared so you know what to say and do when it matters most.
That's right. We want this to be a comprehensive guide, so we'll cover different types of emergencies, from medical situations to fire and police emergencies. We'll also share some specific phrases you can use to ask for help. Ready to get started?
Let's dive in. Let's start with some key terms you'll hear often during emergencies. First up is the word emergency. John, what does it mean?
An emergency is any situation that requires immediate attention. In other words, something serious has happened and you need to act quickly. Common emergencies include things like accidents, fires, and medical crises.
Exactly. Another term to know is 911 or the local emergency number, depending on your country. In the United States and Canada, it's 911. When you call this number, you'll be connected to an operator who can send police, fire, or medical help.
Yes, and make sure you know the emergency number for wherever you're living or visiting, as it's not always 911. Also, familiarize yourself with the term operator. This is the person who answers your emergency call and sends help.
Good point. And then there's ambulance, which is a vehicle that transports people to the hospital. If you or someone else is hurt, you might need to call for an ambulance.
And don't forget paramedic. A paramedic is a medical professional who provides emergency care at the scene and in the ambulance. They're trained to handle serious health issues until you get to a hospital.
These basic terms, emergency, 911, operator, ambulance, and paramedic, are crucial in any emergency situation. Understanding them will help you stay calm and focused.
Now let's talk about some common emergencies and the specific phrases you might use. Let's start with medical emergencies. Emily, what should you say if someone is having a medical emergency?
If you're calling 911 or another emergency number, you could say, "I need an ambulance." Then explain the problem. For example, someone is having trouble breathing, or there has been an accident, and someone is injured.
Good examples. It's also useful to know phrases like, "I think they're having a heart attack," or "they're unconscious," which means they're not responding. Being clear and direct helps the operator understand the situation.
Absolutely. If it's a fire emergency, you'll want to say, "There's a fire," and then provide the location. For example, "There's a fire at my apartment building on Maple Street."
Yes, and if you're in a situation where there's a crime happening, like a robbery or assault, you could say, "I need the police. There's a robbery in progress," or "someone is attacking another person." Being specific about the type of emergency helps the operator send the right help.
Good point. Another important phrase for all emergencies is "please hurry" or "it's urgent." This lets the operator know it's a critical situation, so they can prioritize it.
So remember, be clear about the type of emergency, give the location, and provide any relevant details like someone is hurt or there's a fire. Clarity is key.
Let's talk about explaining your location. In an emergency, knowing how to describe where you are is vital. You might say, "I'm at 123 Main Street, apartment 5. Include details like your floor or apartment number.
Exactly. If you're not sure of the exact address, you can describe landmarks or nearby intersections. For example, "I'm near the corner of Oak Street and 5th Avenue by the grocery store." The operator needs as much information as possible to locate you quickly.
If you're outdoors and don't know the address, look around for street signs, buildings, or anything that can help identify where you are. You could say, "I'm in the park by the playground," or "I'm on a hiking trail about a mile in from the entrance."
Yes, and if you're calling from a cell phone, the operator may be able to locate you, but it's still best to give as much location information as you can. Being specific saves time.
Now let's go over some phrases you can use to ask for help in different emergency scenarios. If you're in a public place, you can say, "Can someone help?" "I need assistance." Or simply shout, "Help." People will understand that it's urgent.
Right. And if you're with a crowd, you can ask specific people for help. Point to someone and say, "You, please call 911," or "Can you help me with this person?" Directing requests can make others act faster.
Yes, and in situations where you need to talk to authorities, you might say, "I need to report an emergency," or "I need help from the police." Simple, direct statements are most effective.
If you need medical help but it's not life-threatening, you could ask, "Is there a first aid kit?" Or "Does anyone know first aid?" First aid refers to basic medical help given before professional help arrives.
That's a good one. And if you're trying to help someone else, ask them questions to understand their condition. Say things like, "Are you okay?" Or, "Can you breathe?" It helps you assess the situation until help arrives.
Let's go over some specific vocabulary related to emergencies and their meanings. Knowing these words can make a big difference in how you handle a crisis. First, we have CPR, which stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This is a technique used to help someone who isn't breathing or whose heart has stopped.
Yes, and another important word is choking. This means someone's airway is blocked and they can't breathe. If someone is choking, you can say, "They're choking. I need help."
And then there's bleeding. If someone is hurt and losing blood, you can say, "They're bleeding a lot," or "I need something to stop the bleeding."
Another term to know is unconscious. This means someone is not awake and not responding. If you find someone unconscious, you could say, "They're unconscious. I need help immediately."
Finally, we have allergic reaction. This is when someone has a severe reaction to something, like food or a bee sting. Signs include swelling, difficulty breathing, or hives. You might say, "They're having an allergic reaction and need an EpiPen." An EpiPen is a device that can help during severe allergic reactions.
Now let's share a story from Lisa, one of our listeners. She recently faced an emergency and had to communicate in English. Here's her experience. Lisa writes,
I was at a park when I saw someone collapse. I panicked because I'm not a native English speaker, but then I remembered the key phrases I had learned. I ran over and shouted, "Help! Someone call 911." A few people stopped, and one person called while I tried to explain what was happening. I told them, "He's unconscious and not responding." Using those words helped everyone understand the seriousness of the situation. When the paramedics arrived, I was able to give them basic information, like the time he collapsed and that he wasn't breathing. They thanked me for the clear information, and I realized how important it was to know those phrases. Without them, I would have felt helpless.
That's such a powerful story. Thanks, Lisa, for sharing that with us. It shows how knowing just a few essential words can make a huge difference in an emergency.
Yes, it really can. Lisa's experience highlights the importance of being able to communicate clearly and quickly. In emergencies, every second counts, and knowing the right phrases can help you stay calm and be effective.
Exactly. And Lisa's story reminds us that these terms aren't just vocabulary, they're tools that can save lives. So if you're listening, don't underestimate the power of learning these emergency words and phrases.
All right, now that we've gone through the vocabulary and phrases, let's talk about how you can practice emergency English. It's one thing to know the words, but practicing them will help you stay calm and remember them in a real situation.
Great idea. One simple way to practice is by doing role-playing exercises. You can pretend to call 911 with a friend or family member, explaining an emergency situation. For example, "I need help. There's been a car accident," or "Someone is having a seizure." Practicing these scenarios will make them feel more familiar.
Yes, and you can also use flashcards with key terms like ambulance, paramedic, and bleeding. Write the word on one side and a definition or example phrase on the other. Reviewing these regularly will reinforce the vocabulary.
Another idea is to watch emergency scenes in English movies or TV shows with subtitles. Pay attention to how characters explain emergencies and the phrases they use. This can help you hear the language in context.
That's a great suggestion. And if you're in a place where English is commonly spoken, pay attention to any emergency signs around you, like first aid or emergency exit. Getting familiar with these can also be helpful.
Before we wrap up, let's share some tips for staying calm during an emergency. First, remember to take a deep breath. Panicking can make it hard to think clearly, so take a moment to steady yourself.
Exactly. Also, speak slowly and clearly. Even if you're nervous, focusing on speaking clearly will help the operator understand you. It's okay if you're not perfect. Just focus on getting the main points across.
Good advice. And remember, the operators are trained to help you, so they may ask you follow-up questions to get more details. Just answer as best as you can.
One last tip: don't be afraid to ask for help from others nearby. In an emergency, people are often willing to assist, but they might not know what to do unless you ask them directly.
That's right. And just having a few key phrases ready in your mind can make all the difference in staying composed and effective during an emergency.
Let's quickly recap what we covered today. We started with basic emergency vocabulary like ambulance and paramedic, and then moved on to phrases you might need in specific situations, like fire or medical emergencies.
We also discussed how to explain your location and the importance of being direct with phrases like "I need help" and "there's a fire." And we heard Lisa's story, which really showed how useful it is to know these terms.
Finally, we shared tips on how to practice and prepare for emergencies, as well as strategies for staying calm. We hope this episode gives you the confidence to handle emergencies if they ever arise.
Thanks for joining us today on the English Learning Podcast. Remember, being prepared with the right vocabulary can make all the difference. Stay safe, and if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share it with others.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Be prepared, stay calm, and remember, help is just a phone call away.